I'm back with another big update on the Dark and Darker drama, the lawsuit between Nexon and Ironmace Studios. So we have this Discord post right here that we're going to go through in just a second. There's a response from in Korean about the takedown, concept artist response, list of assets, Git logs for the first year of development. So all of that is what we're going to be going through today. I'm going to be picking through all of it with you so you can know what's going on, what's the situation, is the game stolen, is it not stolen. Let's go ahead and dive right into this. So the very first thing I want to take a look at was our Korean response to the takedown. So I went ahead and threw that into Google Translate just to double check, and it's more or less the exact same statement. It's a little bit different. There are a few things in here, like very specifically began development with 18 people, significantly more than the initial P3 team of about 11 people. Percentage of dual programmers doubled to 3 and 6, although it's really tough with some of the translated phrases and stuff. This was like, I'm like, is this a mistranslation or translated weird? Because it says, in addition, since the P3 program or P3 project was written while learning, since no programmers had any experience using Unreal Engine at the time of the project, the code and assets of the P3 project were used. I just have a feeling that's not like what that sounds like. It sounds like they're saying we did in fact use P3 project's files, and I just don't think that's what they meant. Next, let's take a look at the concept artist's response to the copyright infringement claim. So this is also in Korean because that is the artist's native language. So I went ahead and translated that as well. My face is kind of in the way, so I'm going to pop that out real fast. And let's go ahead and look at this. So, hello, this is Dark and Darker's concept artist. Remember, some of this is going to be sketchily translated because of translate through Korean to English. But through this document, we would like to refute the allegation that the concept of P3 was stolen from Dark and Darker. Nexon claims that Dark and Darker was developed using P3's assets and claims to be suspicious because of their visual similarity. The contents below are intended to refute this and explain what parts we focused on in class design and why the claim that the results are similar is not valid. The classes in Dark and Darker are made up of classes commonly handled in Dungeons & Dragons and medieval fantasy games influenced by them, and aim for familiar classic fantasy concepts. Therefore, it cannot be seen that it has the distinctive features of Dark and Darker in its appearance or design. Dark and Darker worked on the class concept based on the following 3 concerns. What are the most familiar classes in the memories of classic fantasy fans? What design can you accept without hesitation even if you are not a fan of classic fantasy? What is the range that can be expressed with the assets you own, purchased assets? P3 and Darker have the same concept artist, i.e. because I worked on both. The way the characters are portrayed or the painting style may feel similar, but there are significant differences in detailed composition such as costumes. The following will refute the claim that the P3 and Darker classes are similar through a comparison of each class. So after that initial statement, there's actually a lot more. It's a whole Google Doc. I had to figure out how to translate a Google Doc, and I was able to figure it out. So that was what we just read right there. Now we get into details. So we're going to go through this class Barbarian. When I started thinking about the Dark and Darker's Barbarian, initially tried to work with a barbaric warrior, feel like Conan the Barbarian in the movie. However, I had to use the purchased armor assets in common, so I had no choice but to switch to the current Nordic Viking feel. To elaborate more, even if I drew concept art, I did not have enough time to create assets for it, so I changed the direction of the concept art according to the assets. A draft of the Dark and Darker Barbarian that was scrapped in the works. Okay, I can see they don't have free assets that look like that. So instead, Barbarian used for loading image after drafting. Figure 3. Below is various concept art of the Barbarian I referenced during the work in regard based on if we focus on creating a Barbarian that fits the worldview of Dark and Darker and designing it so that there is no particular problem when using equipment or other classes in common. So what was that again? Various concept I referenced during work in this regard. Okay, so this is what this guy referenced when he was making his images, and they all have, not all, but a lot of them have that very similar feel. Next on, explaining that P3's Barbarian, Dark and Darker's Barbarian are similar. As explained earlier, the Barbarian was created based on works from common fantasy worlds, and furthermore, those used in various games. I mean, damn, they sure do look very similar. But again, it's the same guy made it, but the thing that gets me is like just the expression on the face is so similar. You know what I mean? Kind of weird, but I mean it is different. He's a different type of armor here. But God, there's so many similarities. But it's like, okay, this guy did make both. Just like, I don't know. It's interesting. It's just because again, he made both, but he made them both very similar. Even in details, of course, there are differences. Barbarian's more colorful. Blah blah blah. Horns, shape of the helmet, detail design is completely different. I feel like in the artist's eyes, they'll be like, oh my god, this is so different. But in just like a random person's eyes, they're like, no, this is exactly the same. Like, I don't know. It's one of those things, like, if you played a video game your whole life, like, I could talk about Overwatch, and they'd be like, oh, Mercy, Moira, what's the difference? I'm like, bro, you don't know? How do you not understand this? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like it's one of those concepts. All right, fighters. So it's going to be a similar thing. Popular used heavy armor. Items, figure 6. So this is what... look at this image right here of, like, just totally different than all the rest. So this is what he referenced when trying to draw his image. Okay. Concept designs by other artists. Okay. And then fighter used for loading image after drafting. And then here's the difference between tanker and the fighter. And, I mean, it's similar. It even has the helmet where it's lifted up off of his head in the concept. But, again, it was made by the same guy, but we got a red scarf instead of a yellow scarf, and I don't know. It's just tough because the same guy made the same stuff. Claims tanker and fighter produce similar form. However, you see figure 7, except for the open helm, everything is different. It feels sketchy, I'm not gonna lie, but I mean, it's the same artist. All right, Ranger, Middle Ages, costumes, illustration, design, reference. Starting to get repetitive, so I'm gonna start skimming faster. Reference images, more reference images. All the reference images do look very similar to Ranger. And then Ranger was the one where it felt the most different, like the least, like he made it the most different looking from the original. It just feels the most different. So this one I did not feel like much of a problem. It definitely, like, it was similar obviously, but it was a Ranger and it was different. Then we got Wizard. Same thing. We're going to look at all the examples here. Where do you get the double belt from? Did any of these references have the double belt? None of these references had the double belt across the chest. That is something that is really, really sus to me. Like just so you know, I'm a fan of Darker Darker. I would like for Darker Darker not to lose this lawsuit because I want to play the game. But that is really weird. Does this guy have a double belt? I'm going to zoom it in. No, he does not. I don't see a double chest belt on literally any of these examples. Yeah, that's one thing that's... this one was like the... If I don't know, I'm not a lawyer, but if I was, I feel like this would be the smoking gun to me, is none of his references had a double chest belt. P3 had a double chest belt, and he went with a double chest belt in Dark and Darker. And it's like, but why? And he's like, here's my references, and I didn't, you know, whatever. The closest we get is this guy right here. But he has just normal belts. He doesn't have chest belts. Maybe this guy, if I zoom this really far in, no, he just has necklaces. Yeah, that's the most sketchy part of the whole thing for me, is out of all things, this is what stood out to me in the last video too that I made, was just the double chest belt is so suspicious that, like, I'd never see that on a wizard. That's so weird. Tends to take form of an old man, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that one's super sus. Log? Is this like a mistranslation? You mean rogue? It's definitely a mistranslation. It's definitely a mistranslation. Rogue in Korean translates to log in English. Dark and Darker's logs have different components. That's actually so funny. Dude, translating stuff's so funny. Yeah, rogue, okay. Yeah, here's what rogue looks like. Maybe you can get away with this, sure, but it's same artist, so, you know, whatever. Cleric, I just don't... Whenever I thought of Cleric my whole life, I never imagined them looking like this and like... But I guess if you're going off these, this guy looks... Look at this guy. It looks so funny. All right, we'll go through here. More reference images of a cleric. Oh, I like this last one. This one's badass looking. Look at that. That is super cool. I would love to see that be the female character for a cleric. Okay, P3, Dark and Darker. Again, it just looks so similar. But, I mean, it's made by the same guy, but just damn, it's so similar. Conclusion. They are different. In the way the design of the class is expressed in Dark and Darker is only the result of selecting the ones that are most suitable for Dark and Darker among one of the character designs that have appeared in various fantasy games that have been dealt with for decades and are not designed by stealing P3's trade secrets. Period didn't. I'm sure that's a mistranslation. In conclusion, the allegation of theft is only a phenomenon that arises from the fact that the concept of the two projects are oriented towards a medieval fantasy worldview. We, the development team of Ironmace, focus on the direction of the game we are aiming for and design and express it accordingly. So, I don't know. This one doesn't really have me sold. Mainly, I'm still stuck really hard on the Wizard's double belt. I just cannot stop with that. It's just beyond me. Although this Wizard does have a beard. That's very different. But, I mean, overall, the details are a lot different, though. You get down here, there's less belt stuff here. He has a knife instead of a pouch. He still has the same book. His staff does look different. His clothes do look a little different, but not that different, to be honest with you. I mean, his hats... He's got, like, the, you know, flaccid hat instead of the, you know what I'm saying? Anyway, so also something else I wondered, you know, from a lawsuit perspective and all this, Nexon was like, hey, look, we made Barbarian, Cleric, Rogue, Ranger, Tanker, Fighter, whatever. I wonder if P3 had more classes than that, and they only pointed out these are the ones we had and they copied. Like, I wonder if P3 also had just tons of other stuff, like the Bard and other stuff and all these other classes. That would be a really interesting thing. I don't know that we'll be able to see that anytime soon, but I would love to find that out eventually, but we may actually never find that out. We'll see. After that, the next thing they posted about was a list of assets purchased to create Dark and Darker. Now, I'm not going to spend too long on this because I know I can get carried away on this. They're super fun to look through, but here is that list, and you can see that they just used a ton of stuff from the Unreal Marketplace. You go over to here, and we have $42, the Alchemist's Workshop, which... looks very similar. Some of these parts look very similar to the library room in the game. And then we would have this one, Cavern Set. This is most likely used for the Goblin Cave, I would assume, and maybe for some parts of Hell. And you would just use these pieces over and over again. Deep Elder Caves. So once they decided they were going to do the Goblin Caves, they started buying a bunch of stuff that would be used in the Goblin Caves, I assume. I'm not really sure where I saw any of these assets, but... yeah, and then we got, what else we got in here? Dungeon Souls. What is Dungeon Souls? Oh, yeah, look at that. That's like, I see a lot of these pieces in that room that's like multi-level that they have in the Goblin Dungeon. But yeah, a lot of this stuff, I mean, man, when you buy assets like this, then it's like, it's obvious that it's going to look similar if they bought the same assets. And I don't know. The asset argument is their strongest argument, in my opinion, about why it looks the same. We worked on P3, and we used all this stuff, and we want to make a game that was similar, so we bought the same assets and some more, and made the game. Like, that's illegal, as far as I'm aware. You can just, like, there's no copyright on the Unreal Engine assets, and just to be like, we want to use the same assets because I want a game to look similar because we like that look. I personally don't see any legal problem with that, but again, I'm not a lawyer, though. Then the last thing that they link to is going to be the Git logs. Now, I'm definitely not going to spend too long on this because even though I have a vague idea of what this means, as someone who actually knows a little bit of programming, most of you will have no idea what any of this means. So we're going to scroll up through this, though. There was something I wanted to see in here. So this does start back in 2021. They have the first instance of this. But here was an update where I assume I don't know how to read Git logs. I know people will, and they'll comment probably at some point. But right here, core, if this is what I think this is, you know, adding or updating a file called Dungeon Crawler Game Instance, or this is like maybe the comment right here, a comment about what they added in this one. But we got Dungeon Crawler Mode Base, we got Game State, Crawler Player Controller, Player State. These are like basic, like 101 parts of a video game. The Player Controller, that's what you use in order to control your character and move. Player State, similar thing. Game Mode is like, I don't know how to explain Game Mode for someone who's not developing. It's like, you know, hit start and what is happening. What is your game mode? Is the game mode Goblin Cave? Is the game mode Tavern? The game, I mean, it could be that way. I don't know. It can be designed any number of ways you want, though. It doesn't have to stick into that like guideline at all. The game instance, game state base. These are basic parts. So like if they actually were adding them just right here, let's see, September 17th, and we got the 23rd. They added some more stuff with basic stuff, and then we just go through and. I don't know, but like people who really know what they're doing, they'll be able to go through this and pick this apart and think about whether or not this actually makes sense that they didn't copy or not. I don't know if this actually proves definitively because you're seeing the edits, and in theory you could have the source code on another, like on a text document, and you could copy and paste, but like it depends on if they're using blueprints or they're using C++ when coding in here. And if they're using blueprints, that would be a nightmare to have to do it that way. But I don't know. I don't know that this is conclusive or not. Maybe someone who knows a lot about this stuff will know if this is absolutely conclusive beyond the shadow of a doubt. With my limited knowledge, I'm going to say it's not absolutely conclusive. But if you go through and you know exactly what you're reading, then it's probably close to conclusive. If these are number of edits, then it makes it a little more conclusive feeling, but it's still like I said, it's possible you have the source code on another thing and those edits are one by one you putting it in, but like, I don't know. If they were going to hard steal, I think they would just hard steal. They would just take the file and insert file, you know what I mean? Instead of like literally one by one copying each little thing over. Like, I don't know. It strengthens their legal argument, I guess you would say. It's not definitive, but it definitely strengthens the legal argument. But yeah, if you want to go through this, feel free. I mean, I'll try to remember to link all these things in the description of this video. But yeah, so that was the Git logs. That was what they had for that. And then the last statement here, the only modifications to the logs are masking of sensitive information. And then there's some interesting stuff in here I really want to read to you. So, company was officially founded in October 2021, but our development logs go back to September 2021. This is going to be explained by our company history below, and this was actually really fun. I'm just going to read like maybe all of this because it was so good. So several founding members started work in September 2021. They worked in a shabby jiu-jitsu gym without pay, using our own personal PCs as a test of our resolve and teamwork. And also because we had no investors. Once we realized that our team members could form the foundation of a viable company, the company was formally founded in late October 2021. The original funds were quickly exhausted, and Ironmace almost went bankrupt as we were unable to acquire investors. Luckily, members rallied together and collected funds from over 20 friends and families to bankroll the company for another couple months. This was also quickly exhausted, and Ironmace relied on outsourcing work unrelated to game development to help it survive another month. It was only through grueling meetings and countless rejections that Ironmace was finally able to brave VCs willing to fund the studio in 2022. The studio made it point to accept as little money as possible to stay hungry and motivated to get to the current point. Before we end this, one other thing that was brought to my attention was Korean law. There's actually this fun link to go to, and I'll link this in the description of the video. You can translate this to English using, I think, Google Chrome. And it has a bunch of different laws about trade secrets and copyright and stuff like that. And I read through this, and the most relevant ones that would be, win or lose this case are going to be these ones right here and then some further down. So first off, we have this. So basically the definition of whatever of this article, all this, is that an act of unfairly using information which includes another person's technical or business ideas with economic value, and this is translated, so this probably isn't perfect, in the process of negotiating or conducting transactions such as a business proposal, auction, and public offering for his or her business interests or the business interests of a third party in violation of the purpose of the provision or an act of providing such information to another person that he or she can take advantage of it, provided that this shall not apply if the person provided with such ideas is already knowledgeable about them or such ideas are well known in the relevant industry. So that is where things get a little bit weird. This one, because it depends on how you read into how is this read, and I don't know how Korea does exactly their laws compared to the United States, but it does not apply if the person provided with such ideas is already knowledgeable. And how is that legally defined? Also, I know this probably maybe not be perfectly translated, so we can't always perfectly go off this when it's translated to English. But if this was, we were able to hold it down. What is the definition of already knowledgeable? If you work at a company and you are under no contractual obligation to maintain their trade secrets, and then you leave that company, does that define you as you are already knowledgeable about these concepts and then shield you from this? Or is that not what this is referring to? So I'm not really sure how Korean law is going to work on that. But that would be the argument for or against. And then about them, or such ideas are well known to the relevant industry. Now, this would be the argument that Ironmace would no matter what be able to try to make, which is that Battle Royale, already known to industry. All these concepts for how the dungeon looks, it's in Unreal Marketplace, already known. It's been done in other games, similar styles and things. The game concepts have been done. They even put the one that whatever that game was, something Agartha. I can't even remember what it was in my last video I talked about. So, and it's like, yes, the issue, like I'm talking in a second, like they copy certain things, but it's just gonna be, where are these lines? Where are these lines, and can they afford a legal case? And if they can, where are the lines gonna fall, and did they cross them or not in the eyes of a court? The other one is an act of unfairly. Hold on. Oh, I hate not grabbing from the first letter. There we go. An act of unfairly using data referring to technical or business information that is provided to a specific person or a large number of specific persons for business, or a substantial amount of which has been accumulated and managed by electronic means and which is not managed as a secret among the data defined in subparagraph 1 of Article 2 of the Framework Act of Promotion of Data Industry and Data Utilization herein, the same shall apply, which falls under any of the following. So basically an act of unfairly using data, which falls under any of the following. And then they have an act of acquiring data by theft, deception, illegal access, or other improper means, or using or disclosing the acquired data by a person who does not have authorized access to the data. Now, I think this right here is the exact reason why Nexon tried to get the police to raid them, and the police did raid them, because if they raid them and then they find that you have copies of our source code, then they almost automatically win off of this then, because then they're like, oh, you have data that you have illegal access to data that you should not have, and then that almost instantly guarantees a W. So I don't know if they actually got any information like that or not from the police raid. We'll find out. And then an act of using or disclosing or providing data to a third party by a person authorized to access the data under a contractual relationship with the owner of such data to obtain improper benefits or cause damage to the owner of the data. So going over this again, act of using or disclosing, providing data to a third party by a person authorized to access the data under a contractual relationship. So this one's also going to be about what's the technicalities here, because providing the data to a third party, I guess to their own studio, but by a person authorized to access the data under a contractual relationship. But when they used the data, they were not under a contractual relationship, and it's really going to hinge on, did they literally have the source code available to reference? I think that's the only argument. If the police, not the only argument, that's like the biggest argument. If the police raided them and found you literally had the source code and were looking over at it constantly while working on your work, I think even in American law, you'd probably lose your case then, because it'd be like, all right, it's very likely you infringed on this and trade secrets and all this because you were literally had a copy available to you the whole time you were developing. That'd be very bad. And then anyway, an act of acquiring data or using or disclosing the acquired data with knowledge of the fact of any of the acts prescribed in item 1 or 2 occurred. So again, if they can prove they stole it or had access to it, and then an act of providing, importing, exporting, manufacturing, transferring, lending, transmitting, or exhibiting for transfer or lending without legitimate authority, technology, service, devices, or parts of such devices whose main purpose is to evade, remove, or alter technological protection measures applied to protect the data. So that one I don't really think is going to be super relevant as far as I'm aware. Unless they like hacked into something maybe. An act of infringing on another person's economic interests by using mark that can distinguish the individual's identity, such as name, portrait, voice signature, which is widely recognized in the Republic of Korea and has economic value for one's own business. I doubt that's going to be, none of this was widely recognized in the Republic of Korea. So I don't know. I think, and since this is an and statement, I don't know how they're going to do their logic there, but that I think that means that one's not relevant. And any other acts of infringing on other person's economic interests by using the outcomes achieved by them through substantial investment or efforts from one's own business without permission in a manner contrary to fair commercial practice or competition order. I don't know that would be super relevant. I mean, that is like a broad one, so that could be relevant, but it's not like the most direct one. Trade secret means information including production method, sale method, useful technical or business information for business activities which is not known publicly, is managed as a secret, and has independent economic value. Now, this is why they made the argument of P3 was revealed to the public, and different articles covered it, because they wanted to shoot down this argument, which is not known publicly. And they're saying P3 was known publicly, so therefore this one doesn't. But that was the main reason that they had that in their response, I think. So the term infringement of trade secrets means any of the following acts. An act of acquiring trade secrets by theft, deception, coercion, or other improper means. And that's going to be the only one, because that's just like the vague one. The other, whatever is improper means, which is improper acquisition. Or subsequently using or disclosing trade secrets improperly acquired. What is improperly acquired, which is why the police raided them. If they have a copy sitting around when they're not allowed to have it anymore, then that would be improperly acquired, including information any specific person of the trade secret while under a duty to maintain secrecy. So here, including informing any specific person of the trade secret while under a duty to maintain secrecy, which is not going to be applicable anymore because they don't work there anymore. unless they had some contract that was like 5 years after they quit, they still are under this legal obligation, which I have a feeling they're not. So an act of acquiring trade secrets or using or disclosing the trade secrets improperly acquired with the knowledge of the fact that an act of improper acquisition of the trade secrets has occurred or without such knowledge due to gross negligence. So their argument would be that there was no improper acquisition is what Ironmace's argument is going to try to be here, because they didn't work there anymore, and it wasn't even... It's all going to really... The biggest hinge on this is going to be what was found or not found in the police raid. If the police raid did, in fact, find copies of the source code that were not deleted, even if they weren't using them, it's going to look terrible in a court of law, and I would want to assume that they would lose, but I don't know Korean law. I feel like in America, they'd probably lose based off that, because you would just be like, well, you were constantly referencing this, and you obtained it illegally. So, but we'll see. If they didn't have that, then suddenly their case gets significantly stronger if they can afford to fight this. So, another one is an act... Oh, wait, I just... Did I read that one, or is this the same one? Okay, wait. An act of using or disclosing trade secrets after acquiring with knowledge of fact of improper acquisition. Okay. Which, again, is going to depend on what is improper acquisition. An act of using or disclosing trade secrets to obtain improper benefits or cause damage to the owner's trade secret while under a contractual or other duty to maintain secrecy of the trade secret. Which, again, this one doesn't apply because they are not under a contractual obligation to maintain these trade secrets. They work there. They had access to them. They left. And now they have no legal obligation to keep it a secret, basically, because they didn't sign anything. That's my assumption, at least, on this. I'm not a lawyer, though. Keep that in mind. An act of acquiring trade secrets or using or disclosing them with the knowledge of the fact that they have been disclosed in the manner prescribed in item D, which is, while under contractual whatever, such knowledge due to gross negligence. An act of using or disclosing trade secrets after acquiring them with the knowledge of the fact that they've been disclosed in the manner prescribed in item D, whatever. So item D is not going to be applicable unless they have, stolen, basically. And so that's like the biggest thing that is in here, as far as what is legal and what's not legal. So after reading that, I don't know. I'm still kind of in the same place of, it's just, well, another thing is, are they going to have the money to fight this? Nexon has, illegally speaking, effectively an unlimited budget, and Ironmace may not have that. Investors pulled out and things because of this. So if they have the budget to fight it, will they win? It's definitely possible. Definitely possible, in my opinion. After reading all this, it's going to come down to the police raid. Police raid's going to literally be the biggest thing. If that's not there, it's still possible they lose, but the odds of them winning go way up. Like, it's actually possible. If the police raid found that they just had copies of the source code sitting around in the office, I feel like they almost they get an instant fat L. They instantly lose. That'd be my guess. But I'm not a lawyer. I don't know Korean law. So I just wanted to share that with you real fast. I'm going to link that so you can read over that yourself. But yeah, so that is something really relevant, and I think it affects this a lot. I mean, obviously, this is literally the law they're going to have to fight against. And that is the end of everything they had to say today. So that's the newest update from Ironmace's side. I don't know if there are any updates from Nexon's side. I don't know how to find them if there are. It's very, lost in the weeds. I kind of doubt that they have regular updates like they would, but like Ironmace would. Ironmace wants to keep their community updated because their whole, income relies on us paying attention to them and, keeping motivated for them and wanting to play the game and stuff. But yeah, so the more I see this stuff, the more I'm leaning on the side of they didn't copy. It's still possible. There's still things that are a little bit suspicious. I still can't get over the double belt. I can't get over the Francisca axe file. It's such a specific axe. But I could see all the ways that it would make sense. I could see all the ways that would make sense. Again, I'm thinking it was surprisingly not a copied game. It depends, though, on what your definition of copy is, though. Because if it's oh, we saw this game, and we wanted to do the same thing, and so we did the same thing, and we just did it a little bit different, where is the line between legal and illegal on that, especially in South Korea specifically? Maybe they're doing this whole in the United States copyright law. I actually don't know how that works. But that's really the big question, because I think as far as did they hard copy the game, we literally stole assets and stole source code and then copy pasted it and then built off that, I'm thinking that's very unlikely. Now, I could be wrong. It totally could happen. Like I said, they could literally have the code and then copy paste things one by one over to it or something to make it look not suspicious in the Git log or something. But that just seems very unlikely. That just seems super unbelievably unlikely to have that go that way. And I feel like the question of, say, they Unreal Marketplace, they worked at P3, and then they were like, we wanted all these assets. We like that look. We like these assets. This is what we worked with. This is what we were familiar with. That's what we went with. If they went with that, I feel like that would be a hard argument to argue against. Like, yes, that was copying in a way, but those are assets anyone can buy and use. And just because you use the same assets and have a similar style is not going to be conclusive to me. Like, we even saw in that screenshot that Nexon just loves to spam, that even their map looked different. You could tell that the layouts of everything were different. So if like you go by the same style, I feel like that's like saying cell shading was originally, I doubt the Legend of Zelda Wind Waker. I think Borderlands was one of the very earliest games of cell shading, but I'm sure there's something before that. Whoever made the first cell shaded games, like cell shaded, that's our style. It's illegal to use it. It's copyright. You know, it's like it's not quite that cut and dry with this situation, but I feel like that's a similar argument as to what's going on here. And another thing I thought about is, I'm pretty sure I read somewhere that P3, they changed it to P7, and when they did that, from what I read, I think they turned it into a shooter game. They added guns and things, and I think that would probably make sense that would be the breaking point when all these people who had worked on this game for like 3 years felt disillusioned, and they're like, what's even going on with our project? I don't feel like this is this is going to work long term. And also they probably felt like, I really wanted to see that game I was working on for 3 years be a thing. It was very fun to have it be medieval. It was very fun to not have guns involved and just have medieval weapons. And they enjoyed that a lot, and they wanted to see that become a game because they believed that game would be fun, even though the bureaucracy at Nexon thought, no, let's just make it an Apex clone or something. I don't know what they did. We don't know because they haven't released any details yet on what P3, now P7 looks like or anything. But I feel like that's a likely situation that happened. And then they all left to basically make P3, which basically got canceled in a way. It got changed to some shooter game or adding guns or something, and in their minds, that's, you know, it got reworked into a different game. And they were like, well, if you're going to make that game, we're going to basically make the original. And then they're like, well, we'll do it from scratch, so it's not copyright stealing. We'll just go ahead and make our own version, but we'll use similar assets. We'll do similar things because that game would have been fun, and it's a shame you guys aren't going to make that game anymore. And then they go to make the game, and then Nexon's like, well, no, that's our game that we aren't going to make anymore, so therefore they're copying our game. I don't know. We have to see what P7 is. Is it literally the same thing, but now suddenly everybody just has guns? Like, I don't know. We don't know. We don't know. Maybe we'll find out. We'll find out soon, hopefully. Maybe you'll sub, and we'll find out together, actually, because I'm going to keep up with this and keep posting about this because I love Dark and Dark. It's a really fun game. So hopefully they win the thing. Hopefully it works out. It'll be interesting to see how it goes. So that's the update right now. That's everything we got now, and if there's more updates, I will let you guys know.